Thank you for joining me. This is a tutorial for my Waves of Grain blanket. It's a C2C blanket using a unique stitch that creates this kind of wheat look that you can see here. You have these beautiful grains. This stitch uses the V-ADC stitch and the V-puff stitch, and it's great for a very soft blanket. For my tutorial I'm using Sirdar Country Classic worsted yarn and a tulip hook. I'm using 5.5 millimeter. You can use whatever yarn you have with a suitable hook. So let's start. Okay, so let's start. This pattern uses US terminology, and again this is a corner to corner blanket pattern that use a different kind of stitch, not the classic C2C stitch. So we are starting with chain 4, and we will work a V half double crochet stitch into the fourth chain from the hook. So work 1 half double crochet, chain 1, and another half double crochet into the same chain. Okay, so this is our first row, and we will turn. This pattern is also available on my blog Made by Guti. You can find this version of the square pattern, and the rectangle version is available on the PDF pattern on Etsy on Ravelry. I will link everything in the description. So we start now row 2, and we will chain 3. I do recommend to use a stitch marker if you're just starting this kind of C2C technique, to put around your chain 3. It will help you find it in the next row where you need to work into it. So also this pattern is using the V half double crochet stitch and the V puff stitch. We are alternating these stitches, as you can see here, and we are shifting the V stitches every 3 rows. Okay, so now we are continuing row 2. So after we chain 3, we are skipping the first stitch, which is a half double crochet, and working V half double crochet into the next chain 1 space. So work a half double crochet, chain 1, and another half double crochet into the same chain 1 space. And now we are skipping the next half double crochet and working into the chain 3 space. We will be working a stitch that I'm calling a small side V puff. It's kind of confusing, but it's made of a small V puff and half double crochet to create a hybrid V stitch. It will help us creating these straight edges for the blanket. So the small V puff is worked like this. We are yarning over, insert the hook into the chain 3 space, yarn over and pull up the yarn. Now yarn over again, insert the hook into the same chain 3 space, yarn over and pull the yarn again. We're only repeating this twice, and now we will have 5 loops on the hook. We yarn over and pull the yarn through all 5 loops. We will chain 1, and we are working a half double crochet into the same chain 3 space. So we have this kind of a hybrid V stitch that consists of 1 small puff stitch, chain 1, and the half double crochet to create these straight edges. So now we are turning and continuing to row 3. Now chain 3, skip the first half double crochet stitch and work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. Now the V puff stitch consists of 2 bigger puff stitches that we are making the puff stitch by repeating 3 times. So we are yarning over, insert the hook into the chain 1 space, yarn over and pull up the yarn, and repeat twice more. So it's a total of 3 repeats. And now we will have 7 loops on the hook. We will yarn over and pull the yarn through all 7 loops. Now chain 1 and repeat again into the same chain 1 space to create the V-stitch. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up the yarn, repeat twice more. Yarn over and pull the yarn through all 7 loops. So this is our V puff stitch. Now we will skip the next small puff stitch and the next half double crochet, and we will work into the chain 1 space. The V stitches are always worked into the chain 1 spaces. So we are working a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space. Okay, now we are skipping the next half double crochet and working into the chain 3 space another small side V puff stitch. So again, this is a small puff, so we only repeating twice. We are yarning over, insert the hook and pull up the yarn, repeat 1 more time. When you have 5 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull the yarn through. Now chain 1 and work a half double crochet into the same chain 3 space. Okay, so for row 3 we have our beginning chain 3, a V puff, half double crochet and a side V puff stitch. So let's continue to row 4. Turn your work and chain 3. Now we will skip the first half double crochet and work a V puff into the chain 1 space. So remember to work the bigger puff, which uses 3 repetitions, and you have 7 loops on the hook. So make 1 puff, chain 1, and a second puff into the same chain 1 space. Now skip the next small puff and the next half double crochet and work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space. Now again, skip the next half double crochet and the next puff stitch and work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. Now we reach the chain 3 space, so work a V half double crochet into the chain 3 space. Okay, so now for row 4 we have the chain 3 space of the beginning of the row, 2 V puff stitches and 2 V half double crochet stitches. So this was the setup for our repetition, and now we will start the repetition rows. Okay, so now we are starting row 5, which is the start of the repeat section of the pattern. From now on, every 3 rows we will be shifting our stitches. That means that if we were working a V-stitch, the V-puff stitch into the same V-puff stitch to create this width-like stitch, we will now be working the V-puffs into the V-half double crochet and the V-half double crochet into the V-puff stitch. It's easier to see here. You can see that I have 3 rows of V-puff stitch, and then I'm shifting it aside and working them here. So let's start row 5, it will be easier by working it. Chain 3, and now work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet. So remember to work the big puff stitch with the 3 repetitions. Okay, now you will be skipping the next half double crochet, the next puff stitch, and work a V half double crochet stitch into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch. Okay, so this is the beginning of the row, and now you will have the repeat sections, which means when you repeat this pattern and you will reach again row 5, you will repeat these 2 stitches of V puff stitch into the V half double crochet space and a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch. Repeat these 2 stitches until you reach the chain 3 space. So now I have only 1 repetition. I'm working first the V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. Now skip the half double crochet in the puff stitch and work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch. So again, when you repeat the pattern, repeat these 2 stitches, finishing with a half double crochet until you reach the chain 3 space. Now when you reach the chain 3 space, work a small side V stitch, which I remind you, you work a small puff with 2 repetitions, only 2. Now chain 1 and work a half double crochet into the same chain 3 space. Okay, so now we have 1 V puff stitch, a second V puff stitch, and 2 V half double crochet, and 1 side puff stitch. Okay, so now we are continuing to row 6. Turn your work, chain 3 again. Now we are working the same stitch into each other. So skip the first half double crochet, and this is a side puff stitch, so it counts as a puff stitch. So we work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space with the big puffs, okay, with the 3 repetitions. And now you start the repeat section of this row. You work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet and a V puff into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch. You repeat these 2 stitches until you reach the chain 3 space, and you will finish the row before the chain 3 space with a V puff stitch. So let's start. Skip these 2 stitches, work a half double crochet V-stitch into the chain 1 space, skip another 2 stitches and work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch. Now I'm repeating. Okay, now we reach the chain 3 space, finishing with a V puff stitch. So work a V half double crochet into the chain 3 space. Okay, so this is it for row 6. Turn your work and chain 3 again. Okay, so now we are working the same stitches into the same stitches, because this is the 3rd row before our shift. So after we chain 3, skip the first half double crochet and work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch. Skip these 2 stitches and work a V puff into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch. Okay, now we start the repeat section. Again, you work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet and a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch. You repeat along the row until you reach the chain 3 space. Remember, you will finish your row with a V puff stitch before you reach the chain 3 space. So I'm repeating now. Okay, now I'm working the last V puff stitch. And I'm working a V half double crochet into the chain 3 space. Okay, so you can see we have 3 rows of the same stitches on top of each other. And now we will turn and we will shift our stitches in row 8. Row 8 is actually the repetition of row 6. So we chain 3, and we are skipping the first stitch, and because this is a V half double crochet stitch, we will work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. Okay, so we worked our first V puff stitch, and now we will start the repetition. We will work a V half double crochet into the V puff stitch and a V puff stitch into the half double crochet, repeating these 2 stitches, finishing with a V puff stitch until the chain 3 space. So let's start repeating. a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet. Okay, repeat these 2 stitches and I will meet you at the chain 3 space. Okay, so I finished with the last V puff stitch, and now I will work a V half double crochet into the chain 3 space. Okay, so you can see the shifting of the stitches. Now we turn, we will work row 9, which is a repetition of row 7. So chain 3, and now we will be working the same stitches into each other. So skip the first half double crochet stitch and work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch. Now skip the next 2 stitches and work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch. Okay, and now we will be repeating these 2 stitches. You will work a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet stitch and a V puff stitch into the V puff stitch, finishing with a V puff stitch, and then we will be working a V half double crochet into the chain 3 space. So I'm repeating and I will meet you there. Okay, I worked my last V puff stitch, and now I will be working a V half double crochet into the chain 3 space. Okay, and now we will turn and continue to row 10. Sorry. Okay, so chain 3. We are still working into the same stitches. So work 1 V half double crochet into the chain 1 space. And now we start the repetition of 1 V puff stitch and 1 V half double crochet. We repeat these 2 stitches and finishing with a V half double crochet before the chain 3 space. So let's start a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch. And a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet stitch. Okay, repeat these 2 stitches and I will meet you at the chain 3 space. So I worked my last V half double crochet stitch, and now we will be working the small side puff stitch into the chain 3 space. So work a small puff by repeating 2 twice and chain 1 and work another half double crochet into the chain 3 space. Okay, so this is row 10, and in the next row we will be shifting our stitches again. We are starting now row 11, which is a repeat of row 7, so chain 3, and we are shifting our stitches. So work a V half double crochet into the chain one space. Skip the small puff and half double crochet and work a V puff stitch into the next chain one space. Okay, now we are starting the repetition of this row. We work one V half double crochet into the chain one space of the V puff and a V puff into the chain one space of the V half double crochet. You repeat these two stitches until the chain three space. So let's start. Work a V half double crochet into the V puff stitch. And a V puff stitch into the V half double crochet stitch. Now repeat these two stitches and I will meet you at the chain three space. I reach the chain three space, finishing with a V puff stitch, and now I will be working a V half double crochet stitch into the chain three space. Okay, so this is row 11. Okay, so we are starting row 12, which is a repeat of row 10. So chain 3. And we will be working now the same stitches into each other. So work a V half double crochet stitch into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch. And now we will start the stitch repetition of this row. We work one V puff into the chain 1 of the V puff and one V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch. Repeat these two stitches, finishing with a V half double crochet before the chain 3 space. So let's start. A V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch. And a V half double crochet stitch into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch. So again repeat these two stitches, finishing with a half double crochet before the chain 3 space, and I will meet you there. Okay, so I finished with a V half double crochet stitch and I reached the chain 3 space, and now you will be working a small side V puff into the chain 3 space. So work a small puff stitch, chain 1 and one half double crochet into the chain 3 space. Okay, so let's move on to row 13, which is a repetition of row 5. We are chaining 3 and still working the same stitches into the same stitches. So skip the first half double crochet and work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. And now skip the next small puff and the one half double crochet and work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space. And now start your repetition. One V puff stitch into the puff stitch and one half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet. Repeat these two stitches, finishing with a V half double crochet and I will meet you at the chain 3 space. Okay, I worked my last V half double crochet stitch, and now we will work a small side V puff stitch into the chain 3 space. So work a small puff, chain 1, and work 1 half double crochet into the same chain 3 space. Okay, so let's move to row 14. With row 14 we are shifting our stitches again, so chain 3 and skip the first half double crochet stitch and work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space. Now we are starting the repetition of this row. You will work V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet and a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch. So we will start with the puff stitch, V puff stitch, and then a V half double crochet into our puff stitches. Repeat these 2 stitches and I will meet you at the chain 3 space. I reached the chain 3 space. Make sure you are finishing with a V half double crochet and then work a small side V stitch, V puff stitch into the chain 3 space. So work a small puff, chain 1 and 1 half double crochet into the chain 3 space. Okay, and now we are continuing to row 15. Row 15 is a repetition of row 5, so chain 3, work a V puff stitch into the first chain 1, and a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet stitch. Now you will be repeating these 2 stitches, a V puff into a V puff and a V half double crochet into a V half double crochet. Repeat these 2 stitches until the chain 3 space and make sure to finish with a V half double crochet stitch. Okay, finishing with a V half double crochet stitch. Now work a small side V puff stitch into the chain 3 space. And continue to row 16. This is the last row of our increase repetition and it's a repeat of row 6. So now chain 3 and work the same stitch into the same stitch of the previous row. We will work a V puff stitch into the first chain 1 space. And now we are starting our repeat section of this row. You work 1 V half double crochet stitch into the V half double crochet and 1 V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch. So you repeat these 2 stitches until the chain 1 space, finishing with a V puff stitch, and I will meet you there. Okay, now I reached the chain 3 space, so you work a V half double crochet into the chain 3 space. So this was row 16. You will repeat rows 5 to 16 to keep increasing. Keep increasing your work until you reach your desired length of the blanket, and then I will meet you at the decrease section. Okay, so before we start the decrease section, make sure you finish your increase section with row 16 so you can move on to row 17. So now we are starting with chain 2, not 3, chain 2. I do recommend using a stitch marker around the chain 2 so you can spot it easily in the next row when you decrease. So when we start, we skip the first half double crochet and work 1 half double crochet into the chain 1 space. Okay, only 1 half double crochet. And now we continue with the repeat section. We continue the same as we did in the increase section, and only until the last V puff from the previous row. So we start with V ADC stitch into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch, and V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch. So we repeat these 2 stitches, 1 V half double crochet and 1 V puff stitch. Repeat these 2 stitches until you reach the last puff stitch. Don't work into it. You will finish your repetition with 1 V puff stitch into the V half double crochet, and then we will decrease into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and the chain 3 from the previous row. So just repeat these 2 stitches until the last V puff stitch, and I will meet you there. Okay, so as you can see, I finished with the V puff stitch, and I didn't work into the last V puff stitch from the previous row. So now we will decrease and work a half double crochet 2 together. So we will yarn over, insert the hook into the chain 1 of the V puff, yarn over and pull the yarn through, yarn over again, and insert the hook into the chain 3 from the previous row, yarn over and pull the yarn through. Now with 5 loops on the hook, we yarn over and pull the yarn through all 5 loops. So now we decreased. So for row 18 we turn, and also we are chaining 2. Again, I really recommend use a stitch marker to help you find the chain 2 space in the next row. So now we will skip the first half double crochet 2 together and the next puff stitch, and we will work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. So now it's a row where we work the same stitch into the previous stitch from the previous row. Okay, so now we have the repeat section of row 18. We are working the same stitch into each other, so if we have a V half double crochet, we will work a V half double crochet into it, and the same with the puff stitch, we will work V puff stitch into this V puff stitch from the previous row. So our repeat section is 1 V half double crochet and 1 V puff stitch. Repeat until the end of the row. Make sure we are finishing with a V puff stitch and not working into the last V half double crochet from the previous row. So let's start. We are working 1 V half double crochet and 1 V puff stitch. Again, continue working these 2 stitches until the last V half double crochet from the previous row, which you don't work into it. We will decrease into the V half double crochet and the chain 2 from the previous row. So continue working and I will meet you there. Okay, so I reached the end of the row and make sure to finish with the V puff stitch and don't work into the V half double crochet. And now we will work half double crochet 2 together so we can decrease. We are working into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet and into the chain 2. You should skip the half double crochet of the V half double crochet stitch and the 1 half double crochet that you worked in the beginning of row 17, and you will work into the chain 2 space. Okay, so your half double crochet stitch, your decrease stitch, is worked into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet, the last one of the row, and the beginning chain 2 of row 17. So you can see how the corner is starting to form from the decreases. We are moving on to row 19. Again, we are chaining 2. We will skip the half double crochet 2 together and the next puff stitch, and we'll work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. And a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet stitch. Now we will repeat these 2 stitches until the last V puff stitch of the previous row. So we are finishing this row, this repetition, with a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet, and you will work your decrease into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 of the previous row. So repeat the V puff stitch and V half double crochet, and I will meet you at the end of the row. So I finished my stitch repetition with the V half double crochet stitch, and now we will work the half double crochet decrease stitch into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 from the previous row. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up the yarn into the chain 1 space. Now yarn over, insert your hook into the chain 2 space, pull up the yarn and pull the yarn through all 5 loops. Let's start row 20. We chain 2, again skipping the first half double crochet stitch and working into the first chain 1 space. Now we are shifting our stitches, so work 1 V puff stitch into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet. And now we will start the stitch repetition. So we are working one V half double crochet into the V puff stitch and one V puff stitch into the V half double crochet. So we are repeating these 2 stitches. Okay, repeat these 2 stitches along the row until you reach the last V puff stitch. Don't walk into it. You will finish your stitch repetition into the V half double crochet stitch with a V puff stitch. So repeat these 2 stitches, finishing your last stitch into the V half double crochet, and I will meet you at the decrease. Okay, I finished my stitch repetition with a V puff stitch, and I will work a half double crochet together to decrease into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 from the previous row. And turn. So now we will start row 21. Row 21 is a repetition of row 19. So we chain 2, skipping the first half double crochet together and the first puff stitch, and we will work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. Now we will work a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet. So we are repeating these 2 stitches, working the same stitch into each other. Make sure to finish with a V half double crochet stitch into the last V half double crochet, and we will decrease into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 space. So continue this to make these 2 stitches, and I will meet you at the decrease. Okay, so I finished my stitch repetition with the V half double crochet into the last V half double crochet stitch, and now we will work the half double crochet together into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 space. Okay, we will turn and move on to row 22. So let's start again with the chain 2, skipping the first half double crochet stitch and working a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet stitch. And now our stitch repetition is V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet. So 1 puff stitch, and a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet, repeat these 2 stitches until the last V puff stitch, so you will finish your stitch repetition with a V half double crochet into this V half double crochet stitch, and then we will decrease. Okay, I finished my repetitions with a V half double crochet stitch into the last V half double crochet of this row, and I will work a half double crochet together into the chain 1 space of the last V puff stitch and the chain 2 from the previous row. And now we will turn and move on to row 23. We will chain 2, again skipping the first half double crochet together and the next half double crochet stitch. And now we are shifting our stitches because we finished 3 rows of the same stitch. So work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch. And a V half double crochet stitch into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch. Okay, so you are repeating these 2 stitches, 1 V puff stitch and 1 V half double crochet stitch, and you will finish with a V half double crochet stitch into the last V puff stitch, and then we will decrease into the V half double crochet and the chain 2 space. Okay, I finished my repetition with a V half double crochet into the last V puff stitch, and now we will work a half double crochet together to make the decrease. So work into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet stitch and into the chain 2 space. And let's continue to row 24, chain 2, skipping the first half double crochet together and the next half double crochet, and work a V half double crochet into the next chain 1 space. And now start your stitch repetition. Work a V puff stitch into the V puff stitch and a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet stitch, repeating these 2 stitches, finishing with the V half double crochet, and then we will decrease into the V puff stitch and the chain 2 space. So let's start a V puff stitch into the V puff stitch, working into the chain 1 space, and a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet stitch, continue repeating these 2 stitches, and I will meet you at the end of the row. Okay, finishing the repetition with a V half double crochet into the last V half double crochet stitch, then we will decrease into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 space, work your half double crochet together and turn. Okay, so let's start row 25, chain 2, skipping the first half double crochet together and the next half double crochet, and work a V half double crochet into the next chain 1, so we are working a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet and the V puff stitch into the V puff stitch. You will repeat these 2 stitches. We are repeating these 2 stitches, finishing with a V puff stitch into the V puff stitch, the last one, and then we will decrease into the V half double crochet and the chain 2 space. So continue these 2 stitches and I will meet you there. Okay, I finished my last V puff stitch into the last V puff stitch of the row, and I am working the half double crochet together in the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet stitch, and the next chain 2 space. Okay, moving on to row 26. Chain 2, skipping the first half double crochet 2 together and the next puff stitch, and now we are shifting our stitches. So work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch, and now we will start the stitch repetition. We will be working a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet stitch, and a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch. So 1 V puff stitch, and 1 V half double crochet into the V puff stitch. Repeat these 2 stitches until the last V puff stitch. You will be working a V half double crochet into this last V puff stitch, and then we will decrease into this chain 1 of the V half double crochet and the chain 2 space. So continue working and I will meet you there. Okay, I finished the last V half double crochet into the last V puff stitch, and I will be working the half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch and the chain 2 space. Moving on to row 27, chain 2. This is a repeat of row 25 actually. So we skip the first half double crochet 2 together and the next half double crochet, and we are working a V half double crochet into the next V half double crochet stitch and a V puff stitch into the V puff stitch. So we are working the same stitches into each other. So you are repeating 1 V half double crochet and then a 1 V puff stitch. Repeat and finish with the last V puff stitch into the last V puff stitch, and then we will decrease into the V half double crochet and the chain 2 space. So continue repeating these 2 stitches and I will meet you at the end of the row. I've reached the last V half double crochet stitch, so I will work a half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch and into the chain 2 space. Okay, we are continuing to row 28, so chain 2. Skip the first half double crochet 2 together and the next puff stitch, and work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch. Okay, now you will repeat with 1 V half double crochet and 1 V puff stitch, each worked into the same stitch. So if I'm working a V half double crochet into the V half double crochet, then I will be working a V puff stitch into the next V puff stitch. Okay, repeat these 2 stitches, finishing with V puff stitch into the last V puff stitch of the row, and we will decrease into the V half double crochet and the chain 2 space. So continue working and I will meet you at the end of the row. I reached the last V puff stitch, and now I will decrease with the half double crochet 2 together into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet stitch and the chain 2 space. Okay, turn your work and we will continue to row 29. This is the last row of the decrease repetition. So chain 2, skip the first half double crochet and the next puff stitch, and now we are shifting our stitches. So work V half double crochet into the next chain 1 of the V puff stitch, and then work V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the next V half double crochet stitch. Okay, so repeat these 2 stitches, a V half double crochet into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and a V puff stitch into the chain 1 of the V half double crochet until the last V half double crochet. Work your last V puff stitch into this stitch, and then we will decrease into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 space. So continue working these 2 stitches, finishing with a V puff stitch, and I will meet you at the end of the row. I have reached the end of my stitch repetition, finishing with V puff stitch, and I will work my half double crochet together to decrease into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 space. So this is the end of row 29. Now continue decreasing, working rows 18 to 29 and until you have only 3 V stitches in your row, and then continue to row 30. Okay, so I finished my increased section with row 28. As you can see, I have 3 V stitches in this row. So we will turn and now we will work row 30. We chain 2. We will skip the first half double crochet 2 together and the next puff stitch, and we will work a V half double crochet into the chain 1 space of the V puff stitch. Skipping the next 2 stitches and working V puff stitch into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet. And now we will decrease, working half double crochet 2 together into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 space. Okay, so we have 1 V half double crochet, 1 V puff stitch and half double crochet 2 together. And now we will turn, continue to row 31, chain 2, skipping the half double crochet 2 together and next puff stitch, and work a V puff stitch into the chain 1 space. And now work a half double crochet 2 together to decrease into the chain 1 space of the V half double crochet and the chain 2 space. Okay, and we turn again. So this is the last row, row 32. We now chain 1. Okay, not chain 2, we chain 1. We're skipping the half double crochet together and the first puff stitch, and we are working half double crochet 2 together into the chain 1 of the V puff stitch and the chain 2 space. Okay, this was the last row. you can see. Now if you want to work a border for this blanket, I used a very simple border of a single crochet because I think this blanket has enough texture, so I didn't want to make a big border. So if you want to make the same border, just turn your work in 90 degrees and chain 1, and then start working 2 single crochet into each of the sides of the rows. So I'll be working 2 single crochet into the chain 2 space, and the same thing into the half double crochet together at the end of the row. So continue working 2 single crochet in each row until you reach the corner, then work 1 single crochet, chain 1 and 1 single crochet into the corner, and continue working the same 2 single crochet in each side of the row. Okay, that was my waves of grain blanket. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know how your blanket turned out. Thank you.